Welcome to the Remarkable Relationship Show with Mercy Russell, where we find the wonder in your story. I will be your host for the next hour. I have over 35 years of experience applying the science of relationship systems to my practice of psychotherapy and leadership consulting. My intuitive skills allow me to bring clarity and vision to your challenges. I hope you will be surprised in the next hour. Welcome. I'm so glad to have you here with me today. I'm Mercy Russell, and this is the Remarkable Relationship Show. Today, I will be having a conversation with my colleague and friend, Melissa Kirk. In this show, my goal is to bring a fresh perspective to you on all things related to how humans develop their individual brilliance while navigating the excitement, stickiness, and resistance in their relationships. Our topic today is an unfortunate marriage as a path to empowerment. Melissa and I met 10 years ago in a group bringing spirituality to business. With a degree in psychology and business from UC Riverside, Melissa has integrated her business skills with her intuitive talents as a master in hand analysis, theta healing, astrology, and human design. She is a coach and business consultant, and in her spare time, she loves selling homes. Last week, I talked about how a family systems lens would begin to look at the phenomenon of narcissistic personality disorder. Today, we are going to talk about Melissa's path of self-discovery as she extricated herself from a difficult 20-year marriage. I just want to read you something about Melissa from her website, which is melissakirk.com. Just to give you a little more background on Melissa and her view of her work. I've been there, lost and wondering if I would ever be able to actually live fully in purpose and understand why I am here and how I would like to serve. I've done it, successfully navigated the inner turmoil, and that's why I'm so excellent at helping others do the same. I've hit the lows and then cried myself to sleep. I thought if I got the man I wanted, the job and the house, then everything would be better. Unfortunately, I still felt like something was missing. All I was doing was functioning, searching for something better, knowing that I had a lifestyle I desired and I was going to get it no matter what. I didn't know how I would do it, just that I would. Very simply, the work we do gives you a way to make decisions that work for you. This transformed my life and every decision I made going forward. I'm here to assist you in tapping into your purpose, drawing courage to yourself as you move with confidence into new choices. You'll begin to tune back into your body's wisdom so that you can break free from negative self-talk and redirect that energy towards truly living a life that lights you up from the inside out. And I can testify that Melissa has done this. I've known her for 10 years and I've seen the proof of the pudding. So Melissa, welcome.
Hi, Mercy.
Hi.
Nice to be here with you.
Great. So I just want to start today with just asking you a little bit about your family background. That is my lens, of course, just so we get a picture of who you were when you got married. When you and I spoke, we decided that we would sort of focus on your transition out of your marriage as your path to empowerment. So this is really about you, after all. Can you just let us know a little bit about where you grew up, your parents, and just where your family is from?
Yeah, so I grew up in the Bay Area, in California, and both my parents are teachers. I'm the oldest of four. I have three younger brothers. And, you know, I was taught my whole life that if you do things in a certain order, that you reduce the amount of pain and anguish that you go through. And I tried to check off all the boxes and go through the right steps. I went to, after I finished high school, I went directly to college, and that's where I met my ex. And we got married while we were still in college. But I think one of the biggest things when I look back on it was that I was always a pleaser. I was always trying to do what I was supposed to do. I grew up in a family where divorce wasn't really an option. And so I think that, I felt a little stuck when I got into my marriage, and I realized that it probably wasn't the best idea for me. So my parents are still married. They're in their 80s. And, it just, it was a great learning experience for me to learn how to stand up for myself and learn how to be authentic. And get clear on who I was and what I wanted, because I don't think I really knew. I just kind of did whatever anyone else wanted me to do. I was always being the person they wanted me to be. And, it took a lot of digging to figure out who I really was and who I wanted to be, and to step into being my authentic self.
So, can you just, I'm wondering if, without getting too distracted, because it's easy to get distracted by these details, if you could just fill us in a little bit on what some of the challenges in the marriage were for you. And looking back at this point, how you see your automatic way of functioning that might have fed into the dilemmas that you were facing.
Yeah. Well, my ex was pretty controlling and wanted everything his way, and I was pretty accommodating. But then, I really could never do anything good enough. It was never really to his standard. If I would clean the whole house, he would say, well, I could have cleaned it better. Or if I was cooking and making a meal, there would be always some kind of criticism, even if it was just that I made too much food. There was always something where he was there was a personal attack. And I look back on it now and I feel like, a lot of it was the way he was brought up. I don't think that he ever got a lot of positive feedback. And, he just wanted me to be his slave, basically. But no matter how hard I tried, I could never measure up. It was never going to be good enough. So, it started to make me really question myself and feel badly about myself, and, kind of spiral into, it's pretty defeating to feel like no matter what you do, it's not good enough. So.
Right. It's interesting as you talk about that. I think there is this, we're up against still, of course, this idea that that's what a good wife does, right? Is what her husband wants her to do. Mm-hmm. And that her job is to please her husband. And this is a little bit more of a trap for some women than it is for others. You are a very empathic and intuitive person. So, given that expectation, it would make sense that you would try your best to kind of take care of people's emotions and to do what would make them happy.
Yeah, that was my pattern my whole life was, trying to be a pleaser.
Right.
But the danger of that is you lose yourself in that process.
Mm-hmm. Right. But you were also, as the oldest with three brothers, and then oldest girl of three brothers. Mm-hmm. And there's a vulnerability coming from that position too, in that, and I don't know, just we haven't talked about it, but I wonder too about the way that your, parents were grew up in their families and the expectations that they might have had of you as an oldest. I'm the oldest, and I have two parents who are youngest. So they deferred to me. I mean, from the time I was young, it was like, because they didn't really know how to be the boss. They knew they were supposed to, but it was always very confusing because of course I wasn't the boss. Right? So that made me vulnerable in a way to trying to second guess, what somebody else needed and what I was supposed to do, and not expecting any positive feedback for it because it really wasn't my role. Right.
Right.
So that was my situation as an oldest. And I'm wondering how yours might have played into your experience.
Well, my mom's an oldest and she was the drill sergeant and my dad's the youngest. So they had both of those going on. But I think for me, it made me very independent, very self-sufficient. I was off because I was kind of off. My mom was very dedicated to being a mother. So I didn't need to fill that role, but I kind of, was on, I feel like I didn't ever really like anyone telling me what to do. I was always very independent and wanted to do things myself. And, I've heard my mom sometimes she was talking to one of my sister-in-laws about me when I was a kid. And she said, I never taught Melissa anything. She just did everything herself. So I think when I got married to someone that was trying to control everything I did, and I just kind of shut down eventually when I was trying to do what he wanted, but it was never good enough. So
what was it that attracted you to your husband? I mean, if you were very independent and he was kind of controlling, there must have been something in the beginning.
Well, really, he didn't show that side of him until after we got married. So I remember every day on my honeymoon calling my mom, crying, very upset with the way he was treating me. And he hadn't really treated me that way. When I look back on it, there were signs of it, but not to the extent. And then it was almost like he knew I was trapped once I married him. And so he became a different person. And I think that, asking me what attracted me to him, it was probably just his persistence. He was pursuing me, and eventually, I kind of surrendered to it. So, but it wasn't quite that. All his true colors didn't really come out until after we were married, and it was pretty quick because I realize now he was in a hurry to, because it was hard to put on an act for so long.
Right.
So, and that's why we got married, while we were still in college.
How old were you and how old was he?
I was 18. He was 22 when we met.
Yeah.
And we got married when I was 21. So, but yeah. So, and he had done some other things in college. So he was just about a year ahead of me in school, even though he was quite a bit older. So,
yeah. Okay. So I don't think that's very uncommon too.
No.
Is that things, I always said with both my marriages that there was almost a seismic shift, like when we got married, it was kind of like being pulled to the bottom of the ocean all of a sudden emotionally. And it was a little mysterious to me, but I think that's not an uncommon experience, regardless of what really attracts you to each other or creates a match. Right. So, yeah. So, I think that's a nice kind of broad stroke of the challenges you personally were in the marriage. And what I really want to focus on is how coming out of the marriage and moving forward created who you are today. And I think that we are close to a break. Is that right, Benny?
Yeah, but you're welcome to finish up your last statement.
Yeah, well, I think this is a good time for a break.
Okay, sounds good.
So, and when we come back, we'll be talking about how Melissa moved forward. This is Mercy Russell with the Remarkable Relationship Show. My guest today is Melissa Kirk. We will have an open line for call-in at the last segment of the show. So if anyone's interested, Benny will be watching that. We certainly can fill in the time until then. So anyway, well, look forward to coming back after the break.
Okay, all clear.
Okay, so we have a couple minutes.
Cool.
Yeah.
Always a lot going on.
Always, Melissa. Well, I was looking at your website, while I was waiting, and like,
A lot going on.
it's just who you are, right? We were talking about that yesterday.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel
I
like
try
I
to
have.
rein it in. It doesn't work.
I know. Well, haven't you been advised not to try to win it in?
Yeah.
I'm very similar, but I always feel like I'm kind of a slug next to you.
Well, you don't have the busy channel.
I don't. Golly,
keeps-
but what do? I don't stop though.
Yeah.
I hate to think of what I'd be like if I had the busy channel
Yeah, right.
too. My goodness.
It's pretty crazy.
But you have to take vacations.
Well, that's why, before COVID, that's why I was always traveling just about every month. I had,
Right.
I was at events with you. I used to go
Right.
to all these events and everything because that's the only way I would not work.
Right.
But
Right.
then that wasn't really possible after a while.
I know. Well, it's possible now, dear. So
Yeah. But now I'm out of the habit of it. I just filled it with something else, So
you filled it with more busyness.
yeah,
Yeah.
always.
Right. Well, I don't know. I think you would really like it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll check
Not
it
a new
out.
system you have to learn. It's a lot of what you already know, and it would just, I think, it's a way of just sort of taking it up a level and integrating. I mean, that's my feeling about her work, knowing you and what you already do. So I guess I'll announce the call-in number 2, Benny. Okay. And I assume our conversation's not being recorded.
Correct. And we're coming back now.
Okay.
Yeah.
You can do the call-in number. Hello, this is Mercy Russell with a Remarkable Relationship Show, and my guest today is Melissa Kirk. And we've been talking about how what I call an unfortunate marriage can lead to empowerment and transformation. So Melissa has just been talking about kind of her early life and her 20-year marriage, how she sort of got involved in it and the kinds of challenges that she faced in it. So Melissa, how did you decide to leave the marriage? This was after almost 20 years, is that correct? And 3 children?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think really one of the things was this was in, like 2008 when the market was crashing and we had our own business. It wasn't doing well because it was related to the housing market. And he wasn't really being honest with me about what the situation was. And so we ended up having to move and started going through a lot of shuffling and turmoil, but also I was physically getting sick. So, I think that I realized that the stress of the relationship was causing me a lot of health issues. And I don't really feel like I would have recovered from them if I would have stayed in that situation. So I think that was my parents supported me and allowed for me and my kids to come live with them because I had been a stay-at-home mom.
Mhm.
And so, with that support behind me, I took, the steps that I had probably wanted to take for years, but never knew. I just didn't know how to do it. So at that point, when it was about my physical well-being and the health of my children and everything else, I finally told them that this wasn't working and I wanted
Mhm.
out.
So
Yeah.
how did you know I that your physical symptoms were related to your unhappiness in your marriage? I don't, I think looking back, I have had moments like that too, and but I don't think it's so obvious to a lot of people that the connection between the two.
Well, it's one of the things I do in my business is, every organ in the body has an emotional connection to something. Also, every disease has, an underlying factor to it. And when you start dissecting that kind of stuff, you can kind of trace back to where it originated. Because a lot of times it can be environmental, or it can be the foods you're eating, it can be things like that, or hereditary, but it also can just be your emotional state. Your emotions play a very strong role in your health. And so I started really looking at, and I was training as a massage therapist. And, when you get into that kind of realm, you learn all kinds of healing modalities. And then when I started learning theta healing, which now I teach 22 different classes in the theta healing technique, there's a lot of indicators of which organs are connected with which emotions and which systems of the body are connected with what parts of life. And it just really started putting the puzzle pieces together for me.
Mhm. It's interesting, my kind of my lens is a systems view, and in many ways that is a systems view. I mean, one of the first models of systems thinking is the model of the human body as a system, not just, you can't really isolate any one piece of it from the rest. From a broader systems point of view, the way I would see it when thinking back as I'm listening to you and my own situation is that when someone develops a symptom in a family, a physical symptom, it could be emotional or it could be social, like drinking or stealing or something like that. They're in a one down position in the family. And I think that that makes sense also to me about how you made that connection of I'm flailing here and it's somehow this marriage is pushing me down. And it's easy to say he's pushing me down, but in some respect, it's your position in the system. So what did you discover about yourself as you kind of crawled out of that marriage? And I'm, just want to ask you to talk about experiences you had along the way that I think are part of this transformation that you've had. Because, it's interesting, alongside your analytical mind, I've been exposed to this, and your prodigious memory, by the way you can hold details is really far beyond what I know I'm capable of. You are also a gifted intuitive. So in addition to these really sort of high level cognitive skills, you're also very intuitive. But how did you step into all of this as you left your marriage?
Well, I think, I was pretty emotional and pretty shut down, and I started dissecting, the emotions I was having. And, one of my primary emotions at that time was anger. And, that really affects the liver. But what I noticed was, as I started dissecting it, I didn't really, with 3 small kids to support, I didn't really have a choice but to move forward, to, be in action and make a living and support my kids. So I think that anger got me through it, because underneath all that anger was a lot of sadness. And as the anger, I started dealing with my anger and it started going away. It was harder to keep it together emotionally, right? Because then that sadness isn't a driving force for action. So, I realized like why I was dependent so much on the anger. It got me through. It helped me, it helped me to support my kids. It helped me to keep things together. And then as along the journey, I started to see, the destruction of it and what it was really covering up and what was underneath it. And, I was very hurt by, always being put down and always being told I was never good enough. And just that whole interaction in my marriage. So I think that as I started to dissect it, I had to be my own barometer for who I am. And, just because he said something didn't make it true. And I started, I also started learning about hand analysis. And in the hand analysis, my purpose was to be in front of an audience and have a message that is easy to understand from complicated information, and to, articulate that from the stage and to be seen. And I just wanted to hide. So I really had to start working on my own confidence and learning that what was really true for me. And just because somebody said something doesn't make it true. And I had to start, being kind to myself, loving myself. I had to start having boundaries with people and stop letting everyone push me around. And, it made me a much stronger person. When I left my marriage, it wasn't like I just walked away. There was a lot of harassment and stuff that went on after that kept me in that drama with him. And he would use my kids as pawns. So I really just had to get a higher perspective of the situation. I also had to understand that my kids were, that he was their father for a reason, and they had some lessons to learn with him. And it wasn't my job to interfere with it, because it was really hard to let your kids go and feel like they were in an unsafe situation. But I realized that those were their battles to handle and their lessons to learn. And, I just had to do what I thought was best when they were with me and not worry about what was happening there, because I didn't have control over it. Mm-hmm. So there were so many lessons in it. Letting go.
What can you pinpoint or talk about what kind of support or tools, or you talked a little bit about getting a sense of your purpose with the hand analysis, that of course you might have had some resistance to, right? And I think that, sometimes the things we have resistance to are the things we really need to do. And you have certainly stepped into that. But I'm just wondering, you mean the whole thing of learning how to set boundaries and getting that higher perspective, it doesn't come easily. And I'm wondering, what was it that really helped you along the way?
I started working with a shaman along the way. And a lot of the shaman work is about seeing what's underneath it. Like, where did this come from? Where did this originate from? Is this in your DNA, or is it something that you learned from a past experience? And then I started doing theta healing work, which really gets to the bottom of things. So, like if you feel like your father was very mean to you and told you you'd never amount to anything, looking at what the benefit of that was, because a lot of times that's what makes people, I'm going to prove you wrong, right? And that it kind of puts a fire under them that I'm going to show you that I do have it in me and I am going to amount to something. And sometimes that's our driving force. And so when you recognize that and you can give that force up, you can, still be motivated and successful even without being put down or without being, and looking at things for situations for how they were benefiting you and what you were getting out of it. Why did you stay? Because anyone that's staying in a situation that's not in their highest and best way, they're getting something out of it or they wouldn't stay. But sometimes that's hard to see. And sometimes, that will really trigger people's emotions that, what do you mean I'm staying in this situation because I want to, and it's not because you want to, it's because there's a payoff. And, people don't change until the pain gets worse than what we're experiencing. And so I really started looking from a different lens at every situation and doing, they call it belief work, but finding out like what's underneath that, where's the root cause. And so I think that when I was started to do the hand analysis and I understood what my purpose was, and I understood what the lesson was that kept holding me back, and I started looking at my human design and my astrology and started to see like the blueprint or the recipe for my life for success. But the theta really helped me to remove the blocks and the reasons why I couldn't step into it, because it was pretty scary. It's kind of scary to think of getting up on a stage when, you've been told basically you're worthless. You don't want anyone looking at you. You don't feel like you have anything of value to say. So, I had to get through that head trash. I had to change my way of thinking. I do a lot of mindset work with my clients now to help them be empowered in their life and see where, everybody has a genius. Everybody has something that they're brilliant at, and bringing that out. And then when you feel blocked and unable to step into it, that's when the mindset work comes in to rewire your brain, to stop the head trash and stop the repeating patterns and the monologue that goes on in your head that we all have that came from somewhere, and learning how to move past it. And that's a lot of what I'm helping my clients do, is dissect those root problems and get rid of them.
This is just such a great example of how, your fulfillment of that life purpose, because I love the way you can describe what you do and how it works directly and simply. I just want to say it's really a gift. It's not something that comes easily, to most people. It is part of your nature. So what has surprised you along the way? Can you talk a little bit about that? I mean, I like these stories of things that happen that are kind of magical and that just sort of wake us up and kind of tune us into the fact that there's a lot more going on here than what we can see.
I think one of the things that surprised me the most probably is, when you have someone that's being really, just downright mean to you. And if I told you all the things that he did, you wouldn't think any of the stuff that he did was okay. But learning that I wasn't a victim of it. And if I was going to be a victim of it, then I had no power to change it. And so I think that's one of the most empowering things, is that when you feel a victim to somebody, you're powerless. And so I had to really see like what my creation was and how I allowed this to happen. And I didn't really understand how I was causing part of it. It's hard to see because it wouldn't have been by my outward behaviors, because I was mostly just being compliant to him. But it was the compliance and not the ability not to stand up for myself and to take on his, rendition of whatever the situation was. I think it really surprised me when I started to see another way of looking at it, and a way of, there was also, I guess one of the other things is that he was very, and he went out to a lot of trouble to sabotage my relationship with my kids. And it's interesting now that they're adults, how they've seen through a lot of it. And I am very close with my kids again. Mm-hmm. So I think those were probably being the victim, because I talked to so many people that just are so gripped with they're a victim of their circumstances. And I think that was one of the most empowering things, to step into your role in it and stop being the victim. That's the only way to get empowerment. And it's the only way to have change. And then the other thing, with my situation with my kids, I really never thought that I would have a healthy relationship with them again. I know people that are, in their 20s and 30s, 40s, that they're still angry with their parents, and they still, they won't have a relationship with them. And, I feel like I have a really great relationship with my kids now. They call me all the time. They ask me to do stuff. We hang out, we have fun. And, they rely on me for wisdom and everything else. They're all doing well. So I think if you would have asked me 10 years ago it would look like in my relationships with my kids. And I think that all this work that I've done on myself and improving myself has really transformed those situations too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, certainly. That's, I think the key really is that the work we have is about ourselves, and without directing our, other people in our life, we have an influence, and we model, and you sometimes can't even see how it is that our own growth and strength is perceived, and especially with our children, who are very sensitive to who we are and to how we operate, how they're even putting that together. They may not even be able to tell you. But it just, and it's hard sometimes to convince people that they really need to turn the focus back on themselves and not be so focused on their children or, the ex-husband. And I think you've described that really nicely. I really want to hear from you a really specific moment when you made that, something in some workshop or something where all of a sudden you saw something that you hadn't seen before. Because you talk about this, beginning to see, that your role and stepping out of feeling like a victim. And I don't think that's an intellectual process. It's usually something that really involves your emotions, your perceptions. It's often a bit of a shock.
Well, I think that, I don't know if there's one defining moment, but I think there was a moment in time when I connected several pieces that were going on in my life. When I really realized that I had to stop being a victim in order to have any power in my life. And that was the only way for me to move on and heal all of this. And when I started to really start to look at that, I had to dissect my own behavior. And I didn't realize, like, being a doormat or being passive or being compliant. I never really saw that as a problem that was creating problems, right? I never recognized the impact of it. And then the other piece of it was when I understood my anger. Because, I would work on my anger. I would try to do other, try to not let the anger take over, try not to act out on it. And when I realized that it was covering up all my sadness, I really started dealing with all my emotions and all of the hurt and all of the wounds that I had in there. And I just realized, it's just like if you have some kind of, sore on your arm and someone bumps into you, you're going to have like a violent reaction. It's the same way as when you have an internal wound. If someone bumps your arm and there's no wound there, you may not even notice it. If someone bumps something, though, that is a wound and it's open and bleeding, there can be quite a reaction to it. And I started noticing how, I could find my wounds by my reactions to what people would say or what was happening. And it was pretty informative to start working on healing that stuff. And, to be a healthy person, you can't just carry around all that baggage, and how to release it and how to leave it behind and see the lessons in it, right? Because life is teaching us. Life is showing us, I believe that our soul came here for an agenda and to learn things, certain things. And we attract the people and situations into our life to learn those things. So I wanted to stop, ignoring those lessons. I wanted to see like, okay, what am I supposed to learn from this? Because, what I found was that patterns repeat. You get rid of one situation, you quit one job, you leave one relationship. The next one just comes back in a different form, but it's the same thing till you learn it. And I think that was really motivating.
Yeah, really, really all kind of came together.
Yeah.
So we're going to take another break. This is Mercy Russell with the Remarkable Relationship Show. I'm talking with Melissa Kirk today. And after the break, we'll have open phone lines. The number to call is 888-298-5569. If you would like to speak to either of us, and we will continue the conversation.
Good. All clear.
Okay.
Awesome.
I remember the moment. So I think for me, it probably works a little differently. I remember the moment I realized I had a problem with victimization. I might tell that story. But it involved being in I swear to God, I was in my van, in my parking spot, in my garage. And I think I was talking to Beth. I think she had been, giving me a reading, and she said, "Oh, and you have this you're a victim thing." And I'm like, "No, I'm not. Like, what are you talking about?" Right. I mean, I'd worked with abuse, I'd worked with victimization my whole career. And I'm like, "What? I don't know what you're talking about." And then I got out of the car and I had some packages, some of the stuff in my hand, and it just fell out of my hands. And I got mad at the packages on the floor. Like they had done this to me on purpose. I'm like, "Really?" And then I'm going, "Oh, I think there is a little bit of victimization in there." That's how I saw it. Like, and then it opened me up to the idea of like, okay, it took a while to really see how it was playing out in my life.
Yeah, I didn't recognize it that I was either. I mean, I think that when I look back on it, it's very obvious, but at the time, you just feel like you're being wronged.
Right, exactly. You just feel like, or you picked the wrong person. You made a mistake, right? Oh, my picker is wrong.
Yes.
Yeah, I got a bad picker. And then but you're just like a victim of the fact that somebody, whatever, there isn't any sense of empowerment.
No.
Or what you can do about it. What else are we going to talk about if no one calls in? I really liked what you said about the conversation about your children. I think that was really great. And the idea that they had to have their own relationship with their father, to me, has been the key too. What else? Anything else you want to focus on if we don't get any calls?
Well, I can talk about now, like what I'm doing and how I've aligned with what my purpose is and how satisfying it is now that I've got out of my own way, but like all the work that I had to do to get there.
Yeah. Okay. That sounds good. You keep moving on, huh?
Yeah. You can't let the stuff catch up with you, right? You got to keep going.
Right.
Ready to come back?
Yep.
All right, stand by.
Hello, this is Mercy Russell with the Remarkable Relationships Show. My guest today is Melissa Kirk. We're talking about empowerment after an unfortunate marriage. And I just want to mention that we have our call-in line is open. The number is 888-298-5569 if you have any questions for either of us. So, Melissa, I just, if we're going to continue the conversation, I'd like to hear more about what you're doing today, how you're using the different modalities you work with your clients and in your own life, and just really what the benefit's been for you.
Yeah, well, most of the things that really helped me on my journey are things that I'm using with my clients today. So I do a lot of different readings with people and helping them to figure out, if in their business. And I do some business consulting where I'm helping them to align with who they naturally are and what they're gifted at, because so many people set their businesses up in their weakness, in the thing that's their blind spot or their struggle. And they don't even realize that what they should be doing instead. So a lot of times it's just the role that they play. I had a client that was a salesperson in her business, and she was all about freedom and getting out of the office and connecting with people and helping people from that standpoint. And when at one point her business that she was working for was being sold, and so she actually bought it. And I don't think she had any idea of being the business owner and how different the satisfaction, how different her role was going to be, and that it wasn't as an alignment with the previous role that she had. And so I helped her to hire people to fill in those gaps of where they weren't her strengths, and got her back out connecting with the clients, and her whole business turned around. So really, a lot of times that's what I'm doing with my clients, is helping them to understand who they are, and then helping them to align with that in their business. It can be in their life or their relationships. It can be in their health. It can be in anything. But when we're out of alignment, it has serious effects. And so I realized how it was affecting me, and that's the journey that I went on. So then the other piece of it, which I kind of shared on my journey, was that, yes, I had this blueprint for success, but really no ability to step into it. It was so overwhelming and so scary for me. And so I really had to rewire my brain and think about things differently. And so the mindset work that I do helps people. First, you get your clarity through the blueprints, and then you get out of your own way by changing the way you think about things. And what I've discovered in my, part of my purpose is, teaching and explaining things. And I am doing a lot of teaching of theta healing. I'm teaching human design. I teach, I love teaching. And when I do that, it creates a satisfaction in my life and a fulfillment that then the money follows it, because I've raised my vibration, right? I also do law of attraction coaching. So it's like all these tools that are how they work together and how they complement each other really elevates you to step into a whole different life. And so that's what I love doing for my clients too.
Right. We met at I think, I'm not exactly sure, but I think we met at one of Beth Davis's hand analysis trainings, and then went on to do some other trainings too. And it was really with the first reading I had with the hands. I think I'd heard an interview of Beth with Carol Allen, who's a Vedic astrologer. And she, read my hands. The fingerprints are formed in utero at 4 months. And the system of hand analysis and reading life purpose, among other things in the hands, focuses on the fingerprints. And as if your soul chose this life and this life purpose, not only in your moment of birth, but it's then imprinted and it's given to you in your hands. And what she pointed out was that one of my life lessons involved victimization and power. And I had worked as a therapist in the field of abuse by that point for 25 years. I'd worked with victims. I knew a lot about the sort of what psychiatric science and treatment of this. And I was like, no, I am not a victim. In my apartment after my second divorce, I'm like, no, I'm not a victim. Maybe I don't have maybe things have happened in my life, and maybe I didn't really choose the right men, or maybe I made mistakes. Maybe I'm doomed, but I am not a victim, right? And I think I was sitting in the garage of my condo building, and um, Beth told me this, and I'm like, no. And then I hang up and I get out to step out of the car, and I have packages in my hand that fall on the ground, which is not atypical for me. And I immediately get angry at the packages. Like, you did that to me. That's what I would say. I would say, oh, thanks a lot. Right. Like, you did this to me. You jumped out of my arms. And that moment was, the light bulb went off, and I went, oh, I think that's a victimization, right? If I
That's
can see
what she's talking
packages.
about.
Yeah, exactly. And so it was that pairing of that, and that opened the door. I didn't even begin to know what I was going to be seeing about myself, but it opened the door for me to go, oh, that's really different. And what do I need to do to change it? And it wasn't overnight, I can tell you.
No.
But it really helped to, made such a difference to switch my mindset about that.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's the thing that people don't realize, is that it is a process, and it can take some time to undo, 30, 40 years of patterns, and ways of handling things, ways of thinking. And so when you take a step back and see it from a different perspective, it can be really empowering. But it isn't always, it's a simple process, but it's not always easy.
Right.
So
right.
Yeah.
Now, throughout,
Go ahead.
I was going to say one thing is, throughout my whole career, which was really very conventional. If you look at my resume, it's sort of very conventional for a therapist and a consultant, and the licensed mental health provider, and all of that, and 2 graduate degrees. But all along the way, I mean, from the first time I can remember, I've always used certain tools to help guide me. And often it was in the closet. Like, my professional colleagues didn't know that I was getting astrology readings or studying hand analysis. But what I love about what you do is that you combine not only your conventional, your fund of knowledge about business management and and strategy with this, with really a menu of these intuitive, I would call them intuitive arts, that allow you to see beyond the surface and help clients to tap deeper than really what sort of conventional knowledge shows us.
Yeah. No, I've gone through therapy. I've gone through so many different things, and I really feel like the deep work of going to the root of the problem, where it originated, and clearing up the way that you look at it, has been the most profound way for me to move forward. And, I experienced a lot of times when I was in therapy of them just reaffirming how awful it was, or, giving understanding and compassion for where I was sitting. But that wasn't really helpful.
Mm-hmm. Wasn't enough.
It didn't help change. It just, it validated my feelings, and that felt good for once, right? But I really feel like until you get down underneath what's the root of the problem, I didn't really experience much change until then.
Right.
So
I think there also is the role of having other like-minded people. I know that, meeting you and being in other groups, both with my professional, my more conventional professional colleagues, that has made a difference too, because it really helps not only to fill in the gaps. So Melissa, our time is just about up, but I'm wondering if you could just talk a little bit about how people can contact you if they're interested in exploring more about, how to move forward with their business and their personal life.
Sure. Yeah, I have, my website is melissakirk.com, and it's Kirk is my last name. And if you sign up on my website, there's a free ebook for how to manifest anything. And it gives a lot of tools on like how your mindset, how you're creating your reality. And if you want something different, there's exercises in there. I'm on Facebook, Melissa Kirk Consulting. And I'm also on Instagram. It's just Melissa Kirk _. And there's a place on my website if you want to set up a discovery call with me, or you can also sign up for readings or coaching, whatever. So, yeah.
Perfect. Well, I highly recommend any time you can spend with Melissa. I always benefit from, our conversations and our time together. So this is Mercy Russell with the Remarkable Relationship Show. Today, I've been talking with Melissa Kirk, and we've been talking about empowerment and how empowerment can come from a difficult marriage. Let's say that. I mean, I think that's not an uncommon path for people as they grow. And at any rate, I look forward to the next show, and I encourage you to get in contact with Melissa and to explore how you can move forward, because she's a master at that.
Thank you, Mercy.